Hey, this is Seymour from Boston Barbell, and I want to get into why people's New Year's resolutions typically fail and why it might not be for reasons you'd normally think of. So my goal here today is for us to get a framework for the actual chain of events that go into reintegrating to fitness and see how they lead to someone's disintegration along that process as opposed to their integration into a fitness journey that's more lasting. So we're going to talk a little bit today about the SRA curve, and so that it's defined for people, that's stimulus recovery adaptation. The stimulus recovery adaptation curve, that's a cycle of events in which someone goes through and initiates physical stress training, right? They cease that training and begin the process of recovery. And ideally, if done correctly, they adapt to that training. They have physical adaptations such as gaining muscle or losing fat, etc. That happens in the ensuing time after the stimulus and recovery have completed their journey. So if we think about someone who's getting back to fitness, they're going to be very inspired to start exercising again. They're going to come to the gym and they're going to try really hard with whatever they know how to do. Maybe that's running on the treadmill or walking or what have you. They might try lifting weights, stuff they've seen on Instagram. They may have been an athlete before and they're going to do their old routine. Whatever it is, they're going to come in and give a high amount of effort relative to their starting capacity. And so I want us to look at this graph and see how the stimulus recovery adaptation curve work, and then see what happens when someone comes in with that mentality and why it leads to failure very often counterintuitively. My takeaway for today as well, a takeaway I'd like you to have, is that there is much less, I should say, blame and sense of will and this person's good or bad or a hard worker or lazy or any of these things. There's actually underlying physical phenomena here that I want us to understand, as opposed to just simply assigning value judgments. It's not that those value judgments are wholly incorrect. It's that those value judgments are very incomplete if we don't understand the underlying biochemistry and set of human tendencies that we are all subject to. So in any form of training, okay, even just normal training that's performed correctly. Let's start with someone who's doing kind of just bicep curls. Okay, it's Monday. They just train their chest and they're going to do some bicep curls because, it's Monday. So they do bicep curls. Let's say they do their 10 rep max bicep curl. It's like a life-ending last rep. What is our expectation of how strong this person is at the moment immediately following when they initiated training? They hit that set of 10. So they do the 10 heaviest curls of their life. 10 seconds later, for example, they're weaker, and you'll see that the curve starts to drop down here. So after a moment of high stress, whether that's that set itself or it's the hour you worked out or whatever it is, right? The initial response to training is getting weaker, and that's a very important thing to understand. When someone trains, the first thing that happens is their body is broken down and they get weaker. So now we have this person who has gone from this starting point, has initiated training, they've become weaker, and eventually at some point in this workout, they decide to stop delivering physical stress to themselves by training. They cease training, and with the cessation of training, they begin things that start the actual positive upswing of this curve. They begin to, for example, they have a protein shake post-workout, they eat some meals, they go to sleep that night, they kind of de-stress in general. When that happens, we're going to see this curve start to go up. And this curve going up is what we call recovery. So we have a baseline that we started from with stimulus. We have this curve that starts to go up. That's recovery. If we do the appropriate amount of stimulus, that is, we drive this curve only so low, and we have an amount of recovery that exceeds the amount of stimulus we were given, we cross our baseline up to a new baseline. And that space between our old baseline and where that new baseline is, that's our adaptation. right? That's us getting that much stronger or gaining that much more tissue. So now we've gone from where we were to this new baseline. Ideally, we will reinitiate training only so much and that we can recover from it, cross this baseline, have a new amount of adaptation, and so on and so forth. If you look at this trend line here, that's going to be what we call improvement. That's someone who's going to the gym. They are going to intrinsically understand that their time spent in the gym is yielding something because they will have physical changes to show for their efforts. Now, what very often happens in people's training in general, not just new trainees, they're going to go from this starting point, they're going to initiate more stress than their body knows what to do with. They're going to be like, I'm training my arms, I'm going to take this to failure, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this to failure. They have no sense for how many sets they should do, how many reps, how far from failure, how often, none of those things. They just simply know visceral effort. And they've thought about the training session in the context of one day instead of in the context of a week of days they need to string together to make progress, right? And so all of a sudden they've driven this too low. It now takes longer to get back to baseline than they assumed, but in their mind, it's time for their next arm day or the next time they train arms within the training cycle, and they basically reinitiate training from the same starting point. They do the same thing. And now these might be a little bit lower one day, a little bit higher the other day, but they basically oscillate around this because they have no idea how to take only an appropriate amount of stimulus that can be recovered from and how to time it out to go back above that curve. Because they're focused on visceral effort, they're always driving this curve down too low on the stimulus side, okay? Now, take it one step further, we have this drive even lower. We don't even get back to baseline when we start, okay? We drive even lower, etc. And this line going down here would be either detraining, we're all of a sudden missing sessions, we're starting to go less frequency, we're losing desire to go to the gym. It could also be injury, etc., right? But this is going to translate to a bad fitness outcome. So we consider these three things. Why does this matter for understanding how someone integrates for the first time into the gym? The person who goes to the gym on that first day is almost certainly going to hit the stimulus portion too hard. Their body has no capacity to recover from exercise, and their imagination of what their body can or should do is based on things they've seen about what working out is, and all of a sudden the amount of physical stress that is delivered is one that takes a very long time to recover back to baseline. This person knows they need to go to the gym repeat times, and so all of a sudden they're still going to go to the gym on Wednesday and Friday, but now without being fully recovered. We're going to be still now driving this line lower and lower and lower, right? That's when all of a sudden there's a baseball game that they wanted to see on TV on next Monday, and they're going to skip then because they already weren't feeling good, and we start having all these other things start to pop up. And it's not so much the independent events that are causing the person to miss, it's the fact that the underlying stress is being created at a pace that far exceeds what the person's recovering from. With that being the case, this person is going to struggle to make progress, and intrinsically they are going to realize this is not productive. Whether they know that consciously or subconsciously, they're going to realize that each successive trip to the gym is not yielding a result. And in that time of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, the amount of time that resolutions normally fail, they're going to just simply have not created an SRA curve that trends in the positive direction. Why does this matter? If we're going to understand integration into fitness and why people fail or succeed, we need to understand how much stress should be delivered to them at first, how to recover from it, and what is the pace that people actually progress when they're going to the gym, either for the first time or the first time in a while. And the biggest advice I can tell you is that you should start slow. People always start too fast, and this bottom form of the curve happens. When you tried to get fit last time, this is what happened. So the big takeaway here is also there's not so much a value judgment on like you're good or you're bad or you're driven or you're lazy or you're whatever the fuck you think you should or shouldn't be. It actually has very little to do with that. It has to do with the pace at which your fitness was administered simply did not meet the schedule of your body's improvement. How do you fix that? You'll need to be using some form of a much slower start than what you're used to. You'll need to manage the amount of stress you give your body on a given day and strategize for the regularity of your participation, knowing that 3 days a week at a 5 out of 10 difficulty over the course of 8 weeks is so much better than going 8 out of 10 4 times over the span of that same amount of time, right? So if you do not know how to do this, this is where programming and coaching and things like that come in, because they're going to help regulate the amount of stress you get over time. So if you can take anything away from this video, it's that this has very little to do with your will. The will aspect has to do with you getting started, right? You having the realization that you should get involved and start working out. Everything else after that, we're all answering to a scientific reality. One that's not super easy to understand, but is understandable. If you have questions, fire them down in the comments below. This is our expertise, helping people get into the starting phase of their fitness journey and graduate to the intermediate and advanced levels. Feel free to ask any questions that come to mind.